Good morning, good evening, friends from across the globe, and a special welcome to our guests from Refinitiv. Um, Friends, it is indeed a pleasure for us to welcome people from Refinitiv. It is such a prestigious organization. It is part of the London Stock Exchange Group and is one of the largest providers of financial market data and infrastructure. To our guests, sir, in front of you, we are a very small organization. You can simply say that it is a startup. Refinitiv, my friends, is a 6.2 billion revenue organization with 40,000 customers and 400,000 end users across 190 countries. So you can imagine what is their reach. According to them, sustainability means being an industry leader in the transition to low carbon economy and championing the role responsible businesses can play in the shift, which is the same thought process which we are having, transition to low carbon economy, how we can help a particular segment, that is the financial sector, sir. Now, as far Refinitiv is concerned, they have a noble aim with which they are working, helping the customers to make sound, sustainable investment decisions by enabling them to access the risks and opportunities posed. That's a huge task which they are undertaking. And also, they provide accurate, decision ready. I mean, I like this particular statement: decision ready, auditable, transparent, comparable, sustainability related data. That's a wonderful statement which you have made, sir. Welcome to this group. A very small introduction about this group. This is a non-profit professional association, mainly from finance professionals, academicians, and technology experts today. Our aim is also to sensitize the key stakeholders in climate related financial risk. And our target audience is specifically professionals working in the financial services industry. We have just started this association. We are today taking baby steps in that. So we thought it fit to listen to you because you, compared to us, it's like a David and Goliath. So we would like to listen to you. What are your thought process, your experience in dealing with such similar associations? In what are the challenges which you are facing, and also your guidance as to how we can go ahead so that we all contribute to the brighter future, notwithstanding the war that is going on, which is disturbing the entire climatic is one, but how we can take it forward and make the globe livable for our future generation. So we thought it fit. We are all eagerly waiting for you to share your thoughts, sir. Over to you and welcome to this association. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. My name is Ray McCombs. I am the prop sales specialist for our quantitative and alternative data feeds, of which ESG falls into that. I'm joined today by my colleague, Harris Smirko, who is an ESG specialist on our team and is eager to speak to you as well. I have a presentation that I wanted to go through, and what I'll do now is I'll share my screen. So thank you for the introduction. That was a very nice introduction. You did cover a lot of the specifics on our company. So Refinitiv is a global company. We've recently, last year, were acquired by LSEG, the London Stock Exchange. Previously, before that, we were part of BlackRock, and then we were previously before that branded as Thomson Reuters. So occasionally people are unfamiliar with the Refinitiv name, but they do remember Thomson Reuters, and then they realize the scope of the business. And you were correct. We are a very large company, 6.5 billion in revenue, 40,000 customers, 400,000 end users. We do 250 in bond trading daily, 420 billion in FX trading daily. We are a very large company, but I think what the main point of this presentation is that we have made a commitment to ESG information, and I wanted to show you how that works. So basically, content is our biggest strength. We are okay. So we have the largest number of ESG analysts of all of the ESG providers in the market. They focus solely on ESG collection. There's over 350 of them. Clients have access to those analysts as well, so they can ask questions. And it goes both ways. So our clients can ask questions, but also the corporates that are reporting their information can also ask questions to make sure that their data is being presented correctly and accurately in our system. We're trying to provide as much ESG data as possible in the market. We do have a methodology where we score all of the companies on many, many different metrics, but the end goal for us is to provide all of the raw data behind those metrics as well. So you're able to see all of the information that a company is reporting. Our goal is to make sure that there is not a higher quality database of raw ESG metrics in the market. Our data is audited by third parties to make sure that it's validated. Our analysts clean and standardize the data so that it can be easily compared against other companies. Before it's published, we run automated checks to make sure that there's no outliers. If there is an outlier that doesn't look right, we will engage the corporate to make sure that that information is accurate and follow up with them. We're fully transparent on the raw metrics that make up our scores. We want to make sure that it's easy for our clients to see the information that we're relying on to make these, to put out this information. We put it out every week. We're updating it as often as weekly. And the idea here is that we are not putting any spin on this information. We're not editorializing in any way. We are simply putting this information out there and allowing our clients to use it for their purposes, but to make sure that it is clean and as accurate as possible. This is what our model looks like. Now, the nice thing about our model is that we roll it all up so we can make it as simple as possible. We have a high-level ESG score, and for some clients, depending on what they want to do, that's a great place to start. We often field a lot of incoming calls from our clients saying we need to begin incorporating ESG data into our process, whether that be our investment selection process, our risk process, but we don't really know where to start. And because of the way we roll our data up into these scores, we give them a really, really nice way to start. So we have what we call as our ESG score, which is simply an alphanumeric score on the ESG factors for this company. In addition to just having the ESG factor score, we also have an ESG controversy score. Now, the ESG data comes directly from the companies. So that's coming from the corporates. It's self-reported. At best, it comes out 4 times a year. Sometimes they don't even report it with each filing, but we're getting the company's view on this and their managed reported number. What we do in order to get a clearer view of each company is incorporate an ESG controversy score. That controversy score is outside sources. So news, social media, what are other people's views of this company from an ESG perspective, which can sometimes give us a clearer picture of a company. So we're not just getting their word for it, we're getting what the other companies also view their company as, and any kind of news stories, any kind of incidents that have been reported since their quarterly reporting, and we incorporate that for that ESG combined score. But the nice thing about the way we do our methodology is that we then get as granular as you want. So for instance, we have our ESG combined score. We also have the ESG score, but then we go score for each individual component of ESG, for the environmental, social, and governance. And then we get more granular with their categories here. And if you look at the bottom, we have over 450 data points of ratios and analytics for each of these. So oftentimes when a client comes to us and says, we want to get involved in ESG, we need to start looking at this data, but we don't know how to start. What we'll tell them is that a nice way to start is to kind of just start at the top. Use that combined ESG score, use that ESG score. And then as you get more comfortable in analyzing these companies and using these metrics, you can narrow down your focus and get more specific. So you can go from something like, well, we're not going to consider a company with an ESG score below B. And then as you get more sophisticated with your methodology, you can say, well, we're not going to consider any companies that expel more than X amount of carbon each year, because we'll have that as a data point. So it's a nice way for companies to start with ESG. And then as they get more comfortable and as they learn more about it, all the raw data is there. So, at that point, you can just ignore our scores if you'd like, and just use your own methodology relying on our data. So our data covers about 80% of the world's market cap. We're constantly growing our data capacities and our coverage. I think the important thing to say here is that we are making a very, very large investment into our ESG data collection, analyzing capabilities. We do not believe that this is a fad or something that will go away. We think that ESG is here to stay. We think that it's very important in analyzing investments, and we're making the financial investments in order to continue this and make ourselves a market leader and a thought leader in this space. I think we can see across the globe that in certain places this is already being regulated. In many other places, even though it's not being regulated by the regulatory bodies, it is being market driven. We're time and time again, we're hearing stories that our clients are telling them they want to know what's going on in the companies on an ESG basis before they'll invest in them. So I think this is here to stay. This is not going away, and we want to make sure that we can be a thought leader in this space. So we've been doing this longer than most other companies. So in addition to our broad coverage universe, we also have a very, very long history of data as well. Here you can see our coverage, the numbers that we have on the companies that we cover in each area of the world, and how that's changed over time. We're always trying to pull more and more data wherever we can get it, however we can get it from the companies, but also expand our news coverage of that too, so we can see where stories are breaking that are affecting these companies on an ESG basis. But this is a commitment that we've made, and we're looking to expand in these cases here. I wanted to show you this. This is how some of our data is available on our desktop model. So we have a desktop model called Icon, which some of you may be familiar with, similar to like a Bloomberg terminal, where you can access this data. And if you do have access to an Icon, you'll be able to see this data, where we'll have single company overviews, and we can get into their peer views and their comparisons. We have a screener available to screen on ESG metrics. We can analyze this from a portfolio standpoint. We do have the ability to push this data out into Excel. We have the source documentation as well, so you can see fully transparent where this information is coming from. We have a dedicated ESG news feed and ESG research portal as well. So, when you're focused on the ESG portion of your investments, of your portfolios, you can narrow down and look at the ESG focus strictly from there. The key differentiators for Refinitiv are, the following: is that, we are putting out the raw data. So we want to make sure that this is something that our clients can use to make their investment decisions, be able to analyze the raw data without any kind of spin, without any kind of editorializing. We want to be able to push this out and have our customers be able to analyze it and come to their own determinations. We are very transparent on where that data came from, and it is all auditable. We have large company coverage, as well as the largest data history in the market right now. Our data is objective. Like I said, we're not trying to spin anything here. We do have the scoring customization, so you can score it based on your own, by changing the weights, and come up with your own scoring methodology if you'd like. And then it's easily integratable, either, as it is already on our desktop, but through our data feeds, we can integrate it into your current systems as well. And I think we are competitively priced throughout the market as well. So, we've got the actions along the investment chain here. So you can see here where we are focusing on our sustainable growth. So the map and how, what we're trying to accomplish here, we're putting this data out into the market and how our clients are using it. Right. So, we're working with the companies that are reporting this data to make sure that they're reporting it accurately. We're working with the institutional investors who are using this data in order to make their investment decisions, the advisors who are advising clients. And, what we're trying to do is make this something that is easy to use, but is also easy to use across the chain, so that, everyone can see the same thing and come to their decisions. The goal here is to reorient those capital flows towards sustainable investment, mainstreaming sustainability into risk management, and fostering transparency and long-termism. These are all parts of the goals of our entry into this market and our goal of becoming, the top provider as well. Because we do, like I said, this is something that we see as very important and very crucial to our world going forward. Here we can see the EU timeline on sustainable finance, how this has changed, what's happened, the different reports that have come out as far as ESG. And, these are all things that are in the EU, obviously. And, now that we are, a global company, the EU has led the way on a lot of these things, and the world is following. So, we feel it's very important to follow their lead, and also, push a little bit too on areas that we feel are more important as well. This is kind of an overview of our scoring methodology, and we can speak to that a little more if anyone has any questions. We want to make sure that the raw data is available, like I said, because ultimately, we feel that we need to be fully transparent on this so that our clients can make the right decisions for them. However, we do understand that not everyone is going to be able to take that time. So we do want to put that transparent scoring methodology in so that our clients can, take a glance at a company at a very high level and see how they fit there. So this kind of gives you that overview of the high level score, and then, how it goes out into each environmental, social, and governance piece, and then what those are comprised of as well. And then our goal is to become a fully integrated proposition within our clients. So we want to be able to, use our screening tools to identify their best opportunities, or get rid of their riskiest opportunities. Use our content to engage with companies in their ESG practices. Be able to screen and avoid companies with ethical negative screening. And then incorporate our ESG issues into their financial analysis risk models. And then this kind of shows our shift towards sustainable finance in the economic markets, right? We see a lot of this right now is being driven by client demand, and as well as regulation becoming more and more at the forefront of this, and we expect that to continue as well. The transfer of wealth as millennials put greater importance on ESG factors. We can see that already, that those younger people consider this a very, very important factor in their investment decisions. And then also just climate change. We can see the effects of that, and we want to make sure that we can do our part to drive change in that area as well. So that's our presentation. I don't know, Harris, is there anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, hey guys, Harris here. Still at 9 a.m. in the morning. I've only had my first cup of coffee. Yes, so I'm gonna, Ray, you mind if I just share my screen with everyone, and I can show like what the data looks like? I think that might give you a, like, we talk about ESG data in a very theoretical perspective, but I'm actually gonna show you what the data looks like to answer some of your questions. Does that sound good?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right, so can you guys just give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen right now? I'm sharing it's like a black desktop screen. So this is sort of our flagship product. It's a desktop product where you can actually see the data. You can actually go in and play with the data and see what it looks like. You can export it, you can import it, you can do whatever you want with it. It's really, really cool. And we also have an API for this, so I can go into that a little bit. If anyone on this call is very technical and they want to use it systematically, I'll show you how to do that in here. But the one question I always sort of get is the methodology. How does the methodology work, right? I sort of start the other way around, right? I always show that how we sort of collect our data is we have 400 plus of these analysts that cover a bunch of these sectors and a bunch of this data. And we collect all this data from so many sources. So, once the data is collected, we basically do is we actually look at like 19 or 20 different sources, and we collect the data and determine if something will actually like apply to a company. And what I mean by that is like, collecting things like arms dealing data for technology company might not make sense. So we don't actually include that in the roll up, right? So essentially we start with like 450 measures and we say, okay, underneath that, like let's actually filter those down into 160 comparable measures that are used in the ESG scoring. And then from there, that gets rolled up into some environmental, social, governance, and ESG controversy scores. So like it's definitely a bottoms up approach. And what I mean quantitative is this is all self-reported and peer, we kind of peer evaluate, and we compare it to the specific company's peers within its own sector. That's really important to understand. So there's a question, like we don't compare technology companies the same we do with oil and gas companies. It just doesn't make sense. And I actually have a document that shows that very, very well. And I'll share it over in 1 second. Here, I'm gonna share this other document with you guys. Ray, can you still see my screen over there?
Yeah.
Is it a PDF doc? Is it the PDF document?
It's a PDF table.
Cool. All right. So this is how we sort of weigh those specific, environmental, social, and governance scores. So let me give you an example. Here's banking and services, right? Emissions is only weighted at 17%, right? Or 0.17%, where something like, if you scroll down here, there's there's oil and gas companies where that's actually 32%, right? And this is how we define the weightings of these particular measures and how they should weight based on sectors, right? So that's very important to note, that we don't weight chemical companies the same way we do maybe food and tobacco, or how we might investment in banking services. So that's actually defined in the appendix of the scoring methodology. And here's a 25-page documentation on how we score. Everything's in there with regards to how we collect the data, where it comes from, the timeliness of when it goes in, when it comes out. All that stuff is in this documentation, which is really, really good to read. And then I'm going to go back to our in-app here. This is it's our flagship product called Icon or Workspace. And this is more the methodology in here. And this is where all our ESG data is actually incorporated. So there's something called the Sustainable Leadership Monitor, which I'll show. Portfolio analytics, which Ray said. So if you have a portfolio of 30 stocks or 3,000 stocks, we can actually roll up and tell you exactly what that overall ESG score is of the entire portfolio. You can screen, so you can say, hey, you can screen companies on ESG scores on any one of those 450 metrics, and I'll show you what that looks like. There's a watch list, so there's just a bunch of stuff you can do in here. And then I'm going to just jump into an example really quick. So here's an example I always like to show. This is my favorite example. And this is, I simply search the company Boeing and I click their ESG scores. And here you can get a really good understanding of what their ESG score is, right? Here's when the data was completed. Here's the auditor that completed that data right here. And then here's their overall score, right? So you can see from an ESG score, they have an A-. But from a combined score, they have a C+. And why is that? Right under here, you can see they have a D- on the controversies. And if you actually click into that, you can do a bunch of analytics underneath the hood to see what those controversies are. The really cool thing that I like about our platform is that it gives you transparency for the data. So you can go in here and say anything, right? Here's how much energy they used. Here's if they have or do not have a target water efficiency. It says true, which means that they have a target water efficiency policy in place. And if you actually click the true, you can actually find exactly right there. There's the source link to their sustainability policy, which is really nice if you're interested. But if you're like me, you just like the raw data, which I really like, you can always just hit the export button right here and you can get all this data in a nice and easy to use CSV if you want to use it outside the platform. A couple of other things here, right? You just have a bunch of information here, right? You can go all those measures, right? If you want to know what, like, let's say this water recycled is, if you just hover over that little information button, it'll tell you exactly how we collected that data, right? So any number of these metrics, if you just hover over there, you'll see that data underneath here. And one other thing that I really like, remember, this is peer comparisons, right? So we're comparing it to other companies in this particular, it's aerospace and defense. So we're going to compare it with other companies in the aerospace and defense. And so this is just environmental. If you want to look at something like social, you can just switch over to social and see all their social scores right there. And then you can actually go into any number of, here's the controversies and the governance. So if we go into the controversy score, you can actually see what their controversies are. I feel like there's a place. So anti-competition controversy count, there's 4 of these. And if you click into here, you can actually have the link to the source right there, which is really, really nice. You can read about the Wall Street Journal about their, controversy score. One thing I want to show in here, I'm going to go back into the environmental, and this is really important to me. When we talk about transparency, there is so this is a good example, right? So this particular company, emission reduction target percentage. So they agreed to reduce their emissions by 25%, right? That sounds great. 25% reduced reductions of emissions, that sounds great. But if you actually click that button right there, we can actually see how they do compared to their peers. And it's actually on the lower end. you can see here is there's companies that are more in like the 30, 40, 60, 70%. So this company, while 25% sounds nice, it's actually a lot. It's actually not a leader in its own aerospace and defense sector. So you can see companies in here, are agreeing to 100%, 90%, which is really, really kind of opening. And then a couple of other stuff under here. So that's one view. And then what I always like to do is look at more detail. So you can actually look at the chart view right here. If you click on this chart view, again, this is all available for a download if you want. All this data is available in Excel spreadsheet. So here is this really cool graph, and there's their ESG score. And you can actually see the darker the green, the better they do, right? So they're really good in social and human rights. But let's look at like their environment. So you can click into their environmental score and you can see how this is going to change over here. Now let's look into emissions. Now here are all the scores of their emissions, right? You can see all of these reds, so they don't have they don't have data in here. So what's also something else that's really important, if a company does not report data, it actually gets penalized for not reporting data, which is really important. So if all your peers are reporting data and you're not reporting data, you are going to get penalized for having a lower score. So in this case, they're not reporting on specific things, but we can actually look into, some of this, look through data and see exactly what that means. Does the company report on its impact on biodiversity? It has a 92 score. So you can actually click into that and find that actual score, which is really, really nice. So this is at a company level, right? And you can always just back out and look at this data from like environmental. You can back out and look at social governance as well. So that's really, really nice to show. Do you have any questions here with regards to just at a company level? Okay, I'm gonna move on into the portfolio level. So I'm gonna there's a tab I created a little earlier this morning, and this is just at the portfolio level. You can see I imported the MSCI World, right? This is just an index I brought in, but if you want to do your own custom benchmark or your own custom sort of portfolio, you can bring it into here. You can actually look at all this underlining data. You can see how it rolls up into an ESG score, right? Our portfolio currently is a 70.816. That's our ESG score for our entire portfolio. And here's what it looks like, right? Here's the number of securities, here's the ESG score, and you have, endless amounts of data. Here's how we break it down between environmental scores, human rights, capital, and then top 10 holdings, breakdowns, controversial businesses. It's just endless amounts of returns. So you can actually, click into one of these. And then this will bring up all the controversial business that our portfolio is involved in, right? So again, we've worked at so here's an example, right? Here's these companies, and here, are they involved in alcohol? They are. Are they involved in armed dealings? They're not, or they are. Are they involved in gambling, pornography, tobacco? Here's how much they brought in from alcohol. Here's the revenue that they brought in from alcohol, right? And all these different type of metrics that are reported in here. So that's really, really cool. And you can actually drill down in any number of these scores and metrics and stuff. And then, so that was at the portfolio level. Again, you can bring in any type of portfolios that you want. You can look at the underlying data. You can look at the overall score. You can export all that data just looking at this functionality right here. So this was the screener that I showed that we talked about. So if you want to screen on specific things, it's very easy to do. I have currently I have the MSCI World loaded up, and these are all the constituents. And if you want to just add a column, for example, if you just want to add like ESG score, you can just type it in here and just do ESG score. Or if you want to click into this, you can launch the entire library of data that we have, right? So under here, you can see, I'm gonna take this out, under environmental, social, and governance. Give me 1 second, let me make this a little bigger. Where is the environmental? you can see that we have 844 metrics that you can actually screen on, right? That is so much data. I'm going to open this up and say, okay, under the ESG analytics tab right here, I'm going to open up the indicator scores, right? And then there's, as many of these as you want to add, you can. So water policy, all you have to do is click and add, and you can go back. You can do time series data. You can do, point in time data. You just click something like ESG scores and grades. I'm going to look at the ESG score, and I'm just going to add it in. I'm also going to include the combined score, and I'm going to do the controversy score, and you can see the formulas being built in here. If I click OK, this is just going to populate all that data. And what Ray talked about earlier is it's just not just ESG data. You can actually add like, price data. You can add, close price. You can add, price earnings ratios. You can add various other fundamental and, estimates in addition to your ESG data. So that's really, really nice, really easy. You can see your coverage is, amazing when it comes to this global funds. There's only like 5 or 6 companies that don't have data. But for the most part, we have really, really good coverage. That was the screener. Now, one last thing I'm going to show off and show you one thing that I really spend a lot of time is our code books. I was talking about that API. We actually have a built-in Python tool in our platform, and this is what it looks like, right? So here's just connecting to the Refinitiv data platform, and then you can start pulling data using the get data method. So here's an example. I'm just pulling these scores for Google and IBM, and here's the instrument. Here's the date that the data was collected, and then here's the scores. Here's where I'm pulling way more measures. You can get really, really into this, and it's really simple. I'm showing off because this looks complicated, but actually when you start building these formulas, when you start building these Python methods, it's pretty easy. So yeah, this is, the API is available in the platform. We put it in here, and you can always export and import data. I know I'm doing a lot of talking here, so I'm going to pause and let you guys ask questions with regards to what's available, what's not available, what can be done using our Icon platform.
Yeah, Harris, there are a few questions in the chat if you wanted to address those first.
Yeah, let me take a look at those. Okay, when you rely on corporate disclosures, there's a whole host of disclosures. Yes, so we actually, so the disclosures, right? So we actually have, I've got a little bit of, the question was around what framework do we? So we're framework agnostic, right? So we actually, when we bought this data set from JP Morgan, we were based on the SASB. And so we're pretty agnostic when it comes to which framework we want to use. We have the sustainable development goals as a template in here, and I can show you that for a quick second. So if you want to look at the 17 sustainable and development goals, we actually have a template built in that will show you, hey, are these companies, even at a country level, reporting on sustainability? And I'll run that really quick in here. Include. Let's see, what is the other question? Emissions rates for banking should be based on the exposures to the industries rather than self-emission norms. Considering that this isn't correlation, a better option. Consider. So I think the question is around weightings, right? So what we actually do is we have a template, an Excel template that will pull the data from this particular, from our database, and you can actually change the weighting. So if you disagree with the weightings that we agreed on, you can actually change it yourself, which will solve all that problems for you. So if you say, hey, banking exposure to emissions should be 3%, not 12%, you can actually go ahead and change that, and I can show you how to do that in another session. So we allow end users to change the weightings of their overall ESG score if you want. Not in the platform, unfortunately, but when there's a template out there that pulls the data from the platform, you can change those weightings yourself. Let's see, since it's self-reported data. Yeah, so yes, it is self-reported. So how do we control for greenwashing, right? So how do we control for companies saying, yeah, hey, this is all this stuff? I mean, unfortunately, there's no way to control for greenwashing completely. What we make sure is we can actually back into the data. Again, most other, our competitors actually do a subjective analysis, right? Or sorry, objective analysis, right? They have these specialists who will say, hey, I'm a specialist in this just technology sector. Here's the companies that I cover. Here's what I think. Ours is just quantitative completely, right? When we look at companies' ESG scores, we actually go back and we make sure we can track the data all the way back to those 450 measures, right? So while greenwashing exists and it will continue to exist, we try to eliminate by just providing and sort of providing all that underlining data and tracking it back and auditing that data regularly, having regular updates and having regular checks, having both AI and human eyes on the data to make sure it's correct, looking at outliers like Ray said. So that's sort of how we handle this stuff. And we have in this app we have a we have a contribution tool. So if a company thinks that their score is wrong or incorrect or high or low, they can actually contribute in this app. They can say, hey, here's our water emission policy that we want to submit to you. We want to change our, we want this to affect our score. And then in the app, we'll have, our analysts will look at it, we'll proofread it, they'll read through it and make sure it's accurate, and then we'll update the scores.
Yes. If I'm
Also,
Siddharth here. If I may have a question here.
Yeah.
Yes. So thank you for the presentation, Mr. McCombs and Mr. Smreko. The question is, while you mentioned about greenwashing and your experiences with ESG data for so long, are you coming across any alternatives to ESG? So there has been a backlash to ESG greenwashing. So are there any studies or any, what you would say, alternatives to ESG that you come across in your endeavor to collect data on such objectives?
We do try to address that through the controversy score as well, right? So we're, in addition to taking the self-reported information, we are looking to incorporate outsiders' views, right? So news reports, things like that, where we're getting an outsider's view of that company and their ESG initiatives. So if something breaks about a spill or a labor issue, things like that, we do incorporate that into our view and make that available in addition to the self-reported ESG data, because obviously greenwashing is an issue. So we're trying to address that by having that additional view from others and monitoring that and keeping track of that as well, which can then obviously influence the investment community as well. But we want to make sure that we're as transparent as possible as to where that information is coming from, and how it can color the ESG view of those companies.
So while, if I understand that correctly, the controversy is largely a qualitative thing, and how you would include that as, or rather you would transform that qualitative information into quantitative? Is that how it's done?
Correct. Yeah. So qualitative in a sense that it's numerical in a sense that like how many controversies were out there, right? So if there's there's the Wall Street Journal reports on Boeing having child labor issues or these reputable sources, that will be a count, right? So that's one source. We don't necessarily discuss the degree. We just say, hey, that's one controversy, and then they start adding up 2, 3, 4, and then we look at the industry, right? It's always peer. It's always compared to its peers. If this industry, the average or the median or the mean is 2, and a particular company has 4 or 5, that's really going to affect their combined score. And this is a perfect case. You can see that Boeing is really good at having all these policies in place. They've got a good women, they have a lot of women in office. They have a lot of women who hold high positions at Boeing, but they have a lot of controversies, right? They have a D-. And when you look into why that is, you can see you can see all of these controversies that they've had, right? They've had an ethics issue, that's 1. They've had anti-competition, that's 4. You know, they've had customer health and safety, that's 6 of those issues have popped up. You know, there's 1 here on the complaints. So as these counts of things come up, and you know, the world is seeing these things, the news is seeing these things, they're going to get flagged for it and get a negative score for it.
Okay, thank you so much for your answers. Thank you.
Alice and Ray, I think we don't want to actually tax your time on this weekend. I know I think you have given a lot of inputs. Just I think one, because I think almost we have just 10 more minutes to go. I want to request one thing. This is absolutely a great presentation, especially on the analytics and how actually we need to actually do the ESG rating, how we need to roll up all those things. Absolutely fabulous. We are more interested in one more aspect. This is definitely is required. And one more aspect we are interested is regarding the raw data, because finally that you are actually you are ready to actually sell that raw data to any companies, right, including banks or investment companies, anything. We want to know more about how actually you will source those raw data, and how, because the moment raw data, there will be multiple data sources, right? Like your what is that, your social media, or even what is the company website, so many things. What is your process on the data quality and the data standardization and the governance, all those very, very important aspects, right? So if you can actually come out with one presentation, even 30 minutes at a later point in time, whenever you are convenient. So that will be really, really very helpful. So that I think we want to actually take what is that Refinitiv, and we want to what is that through our networks, we want to do, I think, the marketing of your what is that your data. We want to do that, but we want to understand how we are actually sourcing and how you are doing the quality check, standardization, and governance of your data, and those aspects also, if possible. Harris, is that a possibility?
So yeah, so so I actually think we have some documentation on that. Can I send you, like, I don't know how much you want to read, but we have a lot of documentation on where we start to get the data from, right? What happens when a company says in their annual report, hey, you know how we collect that data, how we scrape that data. I can send you a lot more information on that if that helps. I don't want to answer the question in the wrong way. So would it make sense for me to follow up with you again with like exactly how the collection process works, how the raw data, and what kind of like levers we have in place to make sure the data is accurate, it's clean, it's ready to go, and it's on time, right? Is it okay if I follow up with you with all that information?
Absolutely, Harris. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I know like a little bit about it, but I want to get more granular and get you the right answer.
And we do have a lot of documentation on that, so that would probably be the best way to go.
Okay. So we should not tax, I think, our friends, I think, time on weekend. So any last comments from you, sir?
Harris, like you promised that you will be sharing that documentation. Yeah, not the source, raw data, and other things. What will be more interesting is what methodology you use to normalize, because it's coming from across the globe. Reporting standards are different. Some are mandatory, some are voluntary. I mean, what logic you use to normalize, so that because you are giving industry-wise, yes, and you are also giving comparison. Okay. Unless you normalize the data which you are receiving, then this comparison is not possible. What methodology you use, and is that the same methodology used by your competitors also? I mean, just thought.
Yeah,
because
that's a really good question.
The question is, how do you compare which source to rely upon and other things? Is there any self-regulatory body which determines all these things? Like you said that you give a weightage of say 10 or 15 to banking, and then aerospace 32 and all those things. But you also mentioned you are giving a choice to the users to change the weightage also. Okay. Now the question is, if there are 3 or 4 service providers, how do the user looks at it, which one to rely upon? Is there any standard which has been agreed upon across your segment? That also, it's a curiosity.
Yeah, that's a curious question as well. So the way, so from an initial standardization, right? We standardize and normalize the data. So there's two views, right? There's, if you look at any scores, you'll get a standardized view and a as reported. Can you guys still see my screen or no?
Yes.
Okay, so right under here, right, as reported versus standardized, right? So as reported is the company says, hey, we've generated $26 million in revenue from alcohol sales last year, right? There's no standardization in there. That's just as reported, right? But for standardization, we actually do have a standardized view right here. And what do you mean by standardized, right? The example I always give is like oil and gas for energy consumptions, they will report as millions of liters or kiloliters, but we actually standardized all energy measures to gigajoules. Emissions are in tones, and water-related quantitative measures are actually in cubic meters. So we have these standardized metrics in place so we can compare it across the world and across different companies. And I can send you all of what metrics we use to standardize the data so you can compare it across industry, across country, and across company.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Was that helpful?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So Singhal sir and Bharati madam, any comments from you? Singhal sir, are you there? Any other comments from anyone?
Relajit, Siddharth here, if I may finally ask one final question.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. McCombs, perhaps you are the right person to answer this. So who are your typical users? Who would you say are your typical users, and how do they use it? Banks, I understand, but other than banks, who else do you recommend using using your services here?
Our primary clients are the investment community, so that that's banks, funds, the advisors to those funds, advisors to institutional and individual investors. We do have a division separate from where I am that does sell our information to corporate clients. We've seen a lot of interest in corporates who want to be able to compare themselves against their peers and see how they measure up within their industries as far as ESG reporting. We do have a lot of interest from the investor relations departments as well, who want to be able to put this information out and show where they stand. It's generally going to be, I would say, to put a number on it, I mean, I'm not sure what that number is, but the vast majority of our clients are investment professionals using this data for those purposes. But there are other niche uses which are things like corporates, things like that. And obviously, we also do have several different government agencies and different governments outside of the U.S. that use our data for those purposes as well.
Yeah, I think our use case is very wide in the sense that we have different packages. So we can offer this GUI for a wealth management firm of 6 people, right? They just want to say, hey, we want to look at we're seriously considering a social responsibility portfolio. We want to look at how we do. But we also, on the other spectrum, we provide all the raw data in many forms. So we can provide in a database form, we can provide it in a flat file, an API. So that is actually towards quants, right? If a quant wants to do some back testing and they want all the historical data, we actually can provide that to quants as well. But I'd say the majority is mostly like asset management companies and investment management firms who just want to have some kind of ESG overlay on top of their fundamental analysis, even in their quant analysis.
Thank you so much for the answers, gentlemen.
Yeah, is there anything else I can help answer or show while we have another minute, maybe 2 minutes?
Yes. Any other questions? Otherwise, we should definitely very, very thankful to both Ray and Harris for actually sparing time.
Hi, Rela sir. Hello, Rela sir. Am I audible?
Yes. Kashi.
Yeah. Just one question. For an analysis, I'm using ESG combined score of Refinitiv itself. Okay. So, what do you suggest for a better analysis? Should we consider each and every ESG controversy score and others, or the combined score is enough for a proper analysis?
I think it depends on what your goal is and what your level of sophistication is. We do get a lot of clients asking us, and I think it starts this way with anytime there's a new idea introduced to the market. And ESG is a relatively new idea when you look at the the length of time that people have been analyzing market data. But we will have clients who say, I need to incorporate ESG into my methodology, but it's on a kind of check the box basis where we want to be able to put out a press release saying we are using ESG in our scoring, in our stock selection methodology, and they're really not looking for more than the press release. At that point, then yeah, the ESG score, the ESG combined score, is a great way to start. But I think the really nice thing about our platform is that you can start at that high level and just say, okay, we're not going to invest in companies that are worse than a B in the combined score. But because all of that underlying data is there, it gives them the opportunity to dig in and get more granular. And as they become more proficient in this and understand what is really important to them in their investment philosophy, they can then move on from that combined score, get a little more detailed, and really pull in the information that matters to them, or simply just be able to see what's there behind that scoring methodology. So I think the combined score is a great place to start, and it makes it easy for a lot of people to get to look into an area that they might not be familiar with in the market. Gives them a great starting point. But the nice thing is that all of the data is there. So as you dig deeper into this, you can stay with Refinitiv. It's not like, we just give you that score, and then if you grow beyond that score, you need to find something else. You can grow with Refinitiv to see all of the underlying data there, and really, as you have a better understanding of it, incorporate it into your own practices.
Yeah, to add on top of that, when I do screenings for companies with ESG, I always look at anything above a B- for their ESG score. And then I try to do as little controversies as possible. So, I always go A+ on the controversies because that's just how I screen on companies. And then from there, you can have a universe of 4,000 or 5,000 companies. So that's just me personally. If you want any advice, I do high scores, B- or above, and then A+ on controversies. So I don't do a combined score. I actually just do a screener on B- or above, and then anything in A+. So.
Yeah, and that's the nice thing about our platform is it allows you to kind of break it apart like that.
Yeah. Okay. Very well. Thank
you. Thank you, sir. Thanks, Ray, and thanks, Harris. Thank you very much for the session, and I will touch base with you, I think, offline after this call.
Okay. You guys have a great night.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Please visit our website, social media channels for more information. If you need more details on a specific topic or a component, please send emails to us. Thank you for watching, and looking forward for more collaboration in future also. Thank you.